Call it a cost of doing business. Late payments have always been a point of friction in advertising. Publishers want to get paid today. Advertisers want to pay after the product advertised is sold and delivered. But did you know that in the first half of 2025, 58% of all payments tracked were late? That's a new record high according to today's guest. Welcome back to the State of Streaming podcast. I'm your host, Tim Rowe, and today we're catching up with Nick Carrabbia, EVP at OAREX. OAREX provides sellers with on-demand liquidity designed for the digital ad ecosystem. And in today's conversation, we'll be learning about how the money really moves. How does it go from advertiser to agency to DSP to SSP and finally to the publisher? What is the red flag that could be lurking behind the low CPMs? What does it really mean? What could it mean? What questions should you ask? And how are the fastest growing companies reinvesting revenue immediately to grab more market share and compound their growth even faster? Enjoy. Nick, we've been having a conversation that I'm excited to tie the audience into about the most important piece of our business, how the money moves, how people get paid. OAREX is a company that helps people get paid. Can you give us a brief description on who OAREX is, who the customers are that you solve problems for, and how you create value?
Yeah. So OAREX, it stands for the Online Ad Revenue Exchange. We are the most flexible finance partner in the space, and we provide non-dilutive flexible capital to supply partners throughout the entire advertising and media ecosystem. So supply partners downstream from a brand or advertiser are potential clients that are waiting to get paid, and we provide them with immediate liquidity so that they can scale and grow their businesses.
Everyone's favorite part. And we're going to talk about some of the limitations to supply partners today as it relates to payments, to how that's impacting their businesses and ability to scale. You started releasing a publishing payment performance report back in 2018. And we're going to talk about the first half of 2025 here in this conversation. But take us back. Why did you start publishing this data? Why make this available in the first place?
So we were sitting on a wealth of first-party data that we collect because we collect payments from what I say, demand partners or debtors. I'll use those terms interchangeably throughout the entire ecosystem. And we felt that it was our responsibility to be transparent with that data to all of our partners to help them make more informed decisions. And so back then in 2018, we started with quarterly payment reports. Somewhere around 2021, we pivoted to H1 and H2. And so we released, back then it was hundreds of demand partners, and now it's thousands. And so we release all of that payment information to the public. And since then, we've also added other reports that have been very helpful. You know, our top payers report and, revenue reports. So yeah, we're just here to help.
I appreciate that. And we will talk about the top payers report as well. It's not just doom and gloom, but we are going to talk specifically about that H1 report that showed 58% of all payments that you're tracking were late, which is a record high for your platform. What's driving that increase? What does that mean to publishers?
So that's correct. 58% is a record high. Nearly 6 in 10 payments are late. We take the view that it's very top down and that the macroeconomic factors are really the master pulling the strings. And so you see that credit has tightened over the last several years, and you start to see that ripple out throughout the pay trends in the space.
So if we're looking at it from the perspective, economically, things are tight. COVID created this vacuum effect that you talked about. Can you paint that picture? What has taken place over the last few years that's led us to where we are now?
COVID created this vacuum, as you say, in the early half where there was so much liquidity available that it went hyperbolic. You see record M&A activity, liquidity is everywhere. It's pushing. And then inflation gets to a point where it's so problematic that we have to tighten. It was extremely quick tightening historically. So as that happens, liquidity becomes scarce and difficult to find. And so you see demand partners start paying longer or later, and you see all sorts of credit risk to manifest. There was several bankruptcies that were notable, 2022, 2023. And then, there was a lot of resulting sequential liability and offset risk that flowed throughout the ecosystem. And so we tend to view that as the overarching puppet master pulling the strings.
Yeah, I think it's important to be aware of, and we're certainly experiencing it in the consumer economy. We feel it in our own lives and see it obviously in the news and the trades. But now we're talking specifically about how it impacts our businesses. And surely this is something that isn't a surprise and folks are feeling. What does it mean to a publisher who's hearing 58% of the payments are late? When we really get into how late are the payments, what are sort of the systemic causes for the multiple hops and payments being late? Can we talk about those factors? It's not just the money's late, but there's factors that lead to the money being late, I think, that are important for publishers to consider.
We've always had this view that late payments are endemic. They're just a cost of doing business in the space.
Function of the business. Sure.
Yeah, but there's ebbs and flows to that, right? And so it's important to monitor what is historical payment activity. Are these partners, is that common? And then monitor, is that late growing? So one of the things that we've noticed that is interesting, beyond the fact that nearly 60% of all payments were late, which is a record high, we also see payments greater than 5 days late hit a record high at 32% of the entire portfolio. And then payments greater than 15 days late also hit a record high at 18%. We've always taken the view that, there's some fluctuation, but when you start to see trends in payment delays greater than 2 weeks, that tends to be more indicative of an issue, right? And so as that payment gap widens, you're going to see that manifest in many other ways. And then to your question about the hops, you have, for example, let's say in programmatic space, it's fairly common, say net 60 is roughly the standard on pay terms. But then publishers that are, say, trying to go the SPO route, go more direct or through agencies, those payment delays are much longer. Terms may say 75. We frequently see that they're actually paying net 120 or sometimes upwards of net 150. And so making that jump from net 60 roughly consistently to even 75 is a massive difference between what your DSO and DPOs were prior, right? In that gap. And so that's a heavy burden. And so publishers, every hop in the supply chain deals with something similar. It all boils down to liquidity, but publishers may be paying for traffic and they may be expecting to pay net 30. They may have net 60 to net 30 somewhere there coming in on the DSO side. So payments coming into them, inflows and outflows. But then as you move up, they may be connected to an SSP. That SSP may be connected to a DSP. And then the DSP, they're expected to pay on 60 typically, but they're probably waiting net 75, net 90, net 120. And so that burden in that cash flow cap becomes significant. And then each partner downstream is feeling that pressure in a similar way.
It's a lot to consider, right? Especially as a publisher, a smaller independent publisher for sure, where I want to sell direct business. I probably want to have that business trafficked programmatically. I may want to realize programmatic revenue via the open exchange. There's a lot to this, more than just, hey, where does my money come from and who's giving it to me? There's a lot to consider with how that money is actually flowing into my business. And will I be able to continue doing what I'm doing today 6 months from now if I'm waiting on money from all of these partners? How do you simplify that? How do you make it easier for
the obvious publisher is the partner with us?
I think that's a fair answer. All right. So what does that mean? What does it actually look like to partner with OAREX?
Well, it's very simple. It's extremely easy. We provide that non-dilutive liquidity. Because we know the space, we can be much more flexible than other partners. But, let's just say that a partner comes on, they have the freedom to choose what they sell through us. They trade in those invoices as they want, and they basically turn that into instant on-demand liquidity. So effectively, they take control of their cash flow instead of having to sit on their hands for 60 days, hoping that the payment's actually going to arrive.
Okay, good. Because the alternative of the hoping and the forecasting, and that's a lot versus, yes, I have an invoice and here it is, and I'd like to collect against it.
To even take that further, so much of it's opportunity cost. They could have an invoice, right, that they're waiting to get paid on, and suddenly an opportunity comes up. They can't just say, let's pause and wait 30 days and bring that opportunity back to me. They need to be able to take advantage of it now, right? And so ultimately, cash is king in that scenario, and either you have the liquidity or you don't. Whereas they could take advantage of the revenue that they're waiting to get paid and turn that into more revenue now.
Great. Thank you for adding that. I think that is a very important consideration. Everything is opportunity cost, isn't it?
Yeah.
On the flip side, you have a top payers report. It's not all doom and gloom. It's not all 60 days late. There's some great partners, Magnite, Amazon, Triple Lift. What are those companies doing differently? Talk to us about the top payers report and what makes these companies unique.
So we started releasing that because in tandem with the pay study, we wanted to highlight those partners that pay exceedingly well, at least consistent, right? They're a consistent source of on-time payments for their partners, and those supply partners know what to expect and they can plan accordingly. And so these partners are those that pay consistently within 3 business days. Those payments are arriving. They're not extremely late, and they're always on time. They know this is when I'm going to be paid relatively within a couple of days for processing, and I can count on that revenue so that I can plan for future spend.
Those are great partners. We'll be sure to highlight that so folks can easily access that.
I will say, though, we did just come from an all-time high of 30 top payers, which was nearly halved, falling to 17 in total. So
the trend is there are fewer top payers making the report.
I wouldn't say that that's a trend because the trend was upward, but the most recent data shows at least some sort of revision. We'll see, what H2 has to say.
Well, thank you for the segue. Let's talk a little bit about H2. It's almost coming to a close here, and I'm curious, what are you seeing compared to H1? Can you tease us any insights that you're seeing?
I don't have anything noteworthy to say.
All right, fair.
I will say we did experience a cut of 25 bips, right? Yep. So I think that there is a lot of concerning macro trends in terms of labor and inflation ticking back up a bit, which I was expecting with a cut. But, even a small cut like that could have some positive impacts on spend. So I'm hopeful that, especially Q4 will tick back up to probably not what we've seen historically, but relatively positive numbers and a bump in ad spend.
Well, I think that's good news. That's something that everyone likes to hear, right?
Yeah. We'll see. I've been wrong before. Hopefully not this time.
Well, we all hope that you're right this time. Thank you for breaking that down. If you had to summarize everything that we've talked about today in kind of one line from a publisher perspective, what would it be?
It's hard to boil this all down into considering credit risk and considering opportunity cost. But, I think that there are solutions to your liquidity challenges. And, don't overlook the credit risk that's very real in the space. We've had many clients in the past that they tend to prioritize opportunity over risk. And, everything's fine until it isn't. So just be mindful of it. We published some information to help keep an eye out. Like there's a byline we did called the 5 red flags. And so, frequently we'll see publishers come up and say, oh, these CPMs, they're phenomenal. We've never seen anything like this. They're great. Why won't you buy them? And that's not always a good sign. It's also not always a bad indicator. But if you suddenly out of nowhere see a publisher paying late, maybe abnormally late, and then suddenly they're paying abnormally great CPMs, our ears perk up when we see that, because sometimes the case is that they're trying to sell their way out of a hole, right? So it's not sustainable. They're offering phenomenal CPMs, hoping that sales will booby the ship. And inevitably, it could take 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. inevitably that craters, right? And so just be mindful of it, and be mindful of the fact that cost of capital isn't everything. If you're going to leave dollars on the table, having somebody, a partner like OAREX, who is well-versed in the risk space and the side of that to help you navigate the credit risks, while also providing you, the max available amount of liquidity so that you can scale with ease. Publisher partners, like, for example, where it's programmatic, they can access daily payouts. They don't even have to wait to the end of the month. So they can access yesterday's revenue today. And what we frequently see with many of those partners, they 20, 30, 50x what they would have otherwise done. Because typically, at least historically, Q4 is all about opportunity. And so don't leave money on the table.
That's good. Daily payouts. And that reminds me, I just want to make sure that we included DSOs, DPOs. In case we didn't define it, what are those key terms? How does that relate to the whole getting paid daily pay cycle impact to all this?
Yeah, DSOs are daily sales outstanding, DPOs, daily payables outstanding. It's really just cash inflows and outflows and navigating that cash flow gap, right? Even a few days of waiting has drastic impact on your revenue, right? So being able to take control and plan accordingly, have a partner like us where you can say, all right, I'm going to be able to max spend every day and incrementally compound my ROAS by end of year. I don't know how you put a value on something like that.
It's the eighth grade wonder, right? The ability to compound money is a superpower we should all seek to express. So, Nick, thank you for giving us this lesson today. We'll look forward to that H2 report. We'll publish all of the surrounding content. We'll publish the H1 report. We'll publish the top payers report with this, and it won't be too long before that H2 report hits. So we'll look forward to that. Nick, thank you again. For folks that want to get in touch, want to learn more about OAREX, where should they go?
Yeah, they could just reach out directly to me. There's plenty of information on our site. They could do some contact partner forums if they would like, but hit me up at nick@oarex.com, and we'll follow up and see how we can help.
Sounds great. We'll make sure that is easy to find. And Nick, I can't thank you enough. Thanks for teaching us about this important topic.
Yeah, thank you, Tim, for having us on and for everything that you provide to the industry. It's very exciting.
I appreciate that. If you found this conversation to be helpful, please share it with a colleague or a client. Start a conversation today. We'll see y'all next time.